Dystopia tonight.
Fuck out of town! Fucking treasonous pieces of shit!
Dystopia tonight.
I'm so sorry. I cut you off right as that fucking intro was playing. What were you gonna say?
No, I forget what I was gonna say, but it's great to see you. Great opening.
Thank you so
That'll
much.
that gets me in a cheerful mood.
Listen, I try to keep it as real as possible when we start this shit. Like here's my initial thing with that
Yeah.
intro when we started this show. When I started this show was to just be like, look, this is a fucking amalgam of everything that's on everybody's mind, and then we'll do something else for an hour. And
Yeah.
but also, or we'll discuss it and make you feel better about it, or worse. I'm not really at this point. I'm not really sure anymore because
Yeah,
there's.
no, it's a great opening. It's
Thank
a
you.
great opening. I liked it a lot, but it just speaks to the times that we're in. Definitely.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And I don't even know what the fuck anybody like. It's one. My friends and I are constantly either talking about it or trying not to talk about it by saying how we don't want to talk about it. So really, we're just still talking about it. Like there's this. You're just in this constant feedback loop of like you're at the the control over of the media's will over what they feed you, and it's just nonstop. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't. You don't get a break from it. And I don't even know if we deserve one, but I actually, that's not true. I deserve one, but I'd like to get, how are you handling all of it? You managing it
I'm
okay?
handling it as well as I can, John. I over the years I have taken breaks from the
Mhm.
media.
Yeah.
And even though that's my profession, that's your profession to pay
Right.
attention, but it's really healthy. It's
Yeah.
really healthy. And I can remember in 2020, the summer of 2020, I was talking to Stephen Wright. We're
Mm.
buddies up here and we know each other from way back. And he goes, Jim, I took 3 weeks off from the media and it was great. I felt great.
Right.
This is, yeah, he said, he goes, I felt tremendous.
Yeah.
Just not, checking in every 5 minutes,
Yeah.
And I said, that's a great idea. And I did the same thing. I never took like cold turkey 3 weeks, but I don't have to be on it every second. I don't have to
Yeah.
know everything that happened around the world every 5 seconds.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
just don't, because I can't do anything about it anyway.
I was just gonna say, there's the hopelessness of like not only are you like beholden to staying informed because most of us feel like we have an obligation to stay informed, but at some point you are just kind of like, the fuck are you telling me for? I live in New Jersey, like what do you want? Like, aren't you running the country? What do you want me to do about this shit? Like that's the thing I don't think that these politicians understand, or maybe they do and they just don't give a shit. Is like our job is to elect you, and then your job is to do all the shit you keep telling us to worry about. Like that's I'm done. My job is done. I went out, I voted,
Yeah.
I made informed decisions based on whatever I had at the time. And then now it's up to you. Like I thought
Yeah.
that was the exchange. But like, even politicians I love like have and that's a loose fucking word, love. There's no politicians I genuinely love. But they do this thing where like they'll tweet and they'll just be like, just so you know, right? Oh, Schumer was doing this for a bit, and I kept tweeting back at him. I'm not on Twitter anymore, but like Threads. That's just the terminology. But like, threading back at him or whatever. Like, dude, fuck. What do you? Don't tell me what's gonna happen in the future. You're the one in Congress. Fucking get on it.
Yeah. It's one thing. I think one of the things that we have going for us, maybe it's not as intense right now coming from the politicians, is because they're not so much in fundraising mode as they were in the ramp up for a year or 2 years with the
Right.
election. So at least we're not getting 10, asks a minute or an hour from different groups because so that's good. What I get though, and I bring it on I sign up for all these news alerts
Me
for the
too.
Times, the Globe, the Boston Herald, the Wall Street. I get all these things. So and I sign up for like 5 on each paper. So I'm like, and I brought that on myself,
Yeah, me too.
So, but I have to tell you, AOC has been doing some really great Instagram posts,
She's fantastic.
right to camera. And she's really, in my opinion, pretty logical, pretty normal, pretty centered. She comes
Hmm.
across. And she was saying the other day, I was watching, goes, listen, we're all over, I'm paraphrasing, but we're all overwhelmed. We're
Hmm.
all, she goes, you don't have to know what's going on every 5 minutes. She
Yeah.
said, the average person has no reason to really know everything except like once a day. Like in the old days, people used to check into the news at 6 o'clock,
Oh my
and
God.
you'd find out what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, was always too late for you to do anything about it. So really, you were
Yeah,
like, man, you also had that sense at the time going, man, if I was there ahead of time, I would have stopped that fucking bus. But those days, it's gone.
yeah. But we can self-regulate,
Yes, yes.
and so I like that approach. And I've been kind of since 2020, I have been taking some breaks and things like that, and
Good.
so I don't. Yeah, and
Well,
I
what's cool about you, and you were saying you and Stephen Wright had taken those like extended breaks from the media or whatever. But what you do find out, what I've found out when I do take those breaks is, and I know there's like you can tell me what you think about this too, please, because on one hand you take those breaks and you do kind of realize, okay, how much of what is going on actually affects me, right? And I think as people, you and I are both empathetic people. We know a lot of people who are that way too. There's a guilt that comes along with that too, where you're like, okay, but it is affecting somebody. But like you do have that moment of like, the media makes you feel like this is all happening to you in real time 24/7 and your life is fucked, but in reality it's not that fucked yet, you know what I mean? And it
yeah,
could be, and you need to keep a vigil eye on it. But I mean, if I stayed away from the media for a week, I don't think my life would change that, or based on whatever policy shit they're doing right now, I don't know that it would affect me that much. I know I'm fucked healthcare wise because I'm a comedian, same as you, probably, like, and it's I don't know what they're going to be doing with it, but
yeah,
yeah. Sorry, I don't even know if there was a question in there, but you know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
No, I know exactly what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah,
And one of the things that I realized, I used to take it very personally, like with leading up to the election, like I got to do something. I got to,
yeah,
and I tried to do what I could do.
sure,
However, since the post election, and since the level of intensity is so deliberately, uh, as they said, flood the zone, as these executive orders are coming, I don't even know how many there are now,
right,
but and that's the whole purpose, to confuse people, to overwhelm them, so the media can't respond, the average person can't respond. We're all like, what are we doing? The Democrats are having a hard time finding their footing. They're not sure what to do, but that's all deliberate. But I also realize that, this is way above me.
yeah,
This is way above my pay grade. I mean, I'm going to try to be involved. I'm going to try to do what I can as a comic. I'm trying to do what I can on stage.
yes,
I'm trying to, and that's a great thing to be able to do, just to be on stage and to, make people laugh, and to, in my case, I'm doing the one person show. So it's a story. It's not even about today this happened and then yesterday that happened. It's not even about that. It's more of a personal narrative that is hopeful. So I feel like I did one the other night that was just a sold out show up in Newburyport in New Hampshire, excuse
nice.
me, Mass.
Oh,
And it was just awesome to be in front of 200 people,
yeah,
and they're with you the whole time. And it wasn't even hardcore political. It was just about,
having fun, yeah,
just it was about having fun and all of that. And so it made me just think that this is a great gift. I just want to use it to the extent that I can, that helps people. The name of the show is Humor and Hope for Humanity. So I got to keep it hopeful.
yeah,
And but anyway, but what I was saying is, it's so far above my pay grade or the average person. But we have the courts, and we have the courts that are stepping up, and we
yes,
have these law enforcement officials that are stepping up, and we have people who really do this for a living, who know what's going on,
Right.
to act as that checks and balance, even though there's a lot of it that they're just ramming down our throats as a country.
Agreed. Yeah. No, you're right. And that it's so funny because I'll be dipping into that, well of depression every now and again because of what's
Yeah,
going on. And then I do get to talk to, thankfully do this kind of thing too and talk to the guys like you and other comedians. And it makes
yeah,
me feel because for a while, like even going back out, like I've done, I've been going back out and doing shows and obviously and stuff like that and gearing up for another tour too. And then but my friend and I, we go out on the road together and she opens up for me, and she's gay and married to a woman and I look like me. And so, but we're basically like, what the like, is it gonna suck now? How do we go back out and talk about this shit, with not knowing who's gonna be in the audience, not knowing
yes,
who's gonna be in this club? But, if I think about it, I haven't found too much. I mean, you know, where there's going to be the resistance, and then maybe you can adjust and gear for it. But I tend
yeah.
to lean into it. I don't know.
I was just writing this thing for Broadway World. I got some questions from them too, and one of them was, how is comedy and politics?
Mm,
What role does politics play in comedy, or
sure.
what role is comedy playing in politics? Anyway, but one of the points I made is, with the audiences, it's playing a very big role.
Yeah.
Okay, but the audiences, and I don't know if you found this, I started to find this about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, where the audiences, unless they know you, unless you're Bill Maher or Jon Stewart or somebody who has a brand that we know what we're going to get with Chappelle, we know what we're going to
Yeah.
get with these people. Um, a lot of people are not there for that. They're not
Right.
there for necessarily my political opinions if they don't know me,
Right.
and so that makes it harder. That can be trickier. So we got to be more, we have to finesse what we
Absolutely.
say. We got to finesse and get people to know us as people
Yeah.
before we start going, yeah, let me tell you
And
something else.
exactly. And that's the thing, because that's like right now, that's the visceral part of it is always in the front. So, not
Yeah,
that I'm not dumb enough as a comic anymore, to lean into that right away, but
yeah,
it's such a thing at the forefront that I really have to now try to reel it in because, I'm looking at the audience ahead of time and I'm like, oh, this fucking guy voted Matt. You know what I mean? Like this fuck this guy. And I really have to like go, just don't look at him for the love of God. Just wait till you get on stage. And then, but like all the comedian tricks of like, for me, when I have to do it, I save all that shit till the very end almost
yeah,
because I go, I'm gonna let them like me
yeah,
and take this ride with me. And then usually they go along with it pretty well. I just don't know, like before they did. Like because here's my thing. First administration, I think everybody had this point of view where it was like, okay, the people who voted for him, it was a mistake, right? Like there was definitely the ones who did it because they're racist and they wanted to, it was, or it was about their bottom line, or they just didn't give a fuck. And then, but there was, I think, enough of a thing in our heads where we were like, okay, but they must have realized the error of their ways. Second time around is fucking on purpose. So that's what's shifting in my head where I'm like, I
right,
don't know,
right,
right?
right. Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I was going to say is about the people that um, put it this way.
Mhm.
When I was writing this today, I was just sending in this Q&A, and I just know that in order for me to be effective on
Mm.
stage, I gotta say what I mean, be funny, make sense with what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Make sense, not just bomb throwing. It's got to make sense. It's
Yep.
got to be, well, this is what I wanted to say. And also, I found, people would say, well, how you gonna react if Trump wins, like when he won the first time? How are you gonna react to your relatives who voted the other way or your
Ah,
friends? And it occurred to me, how about just congratulations? Congratulations. You
Yeah,
guys won. And I said that to a few people, a couple of guys at the gym who we had talked before the election, a couple of comic friends of mine. Hey,
sure.
man, congratulations. You guys won. And I remember how good I felt when Obama won,
Yeah, yeah,
like when Obama won, that was like a big deal. And half the country didn't vote for him,
yeah,
but so the pendulum has swung. So I think respect for the audience is really key. So lately, and this time around on stage, I'm saying when I get into the politics about the election, say election was wild. We had a wild election. For all the Trump supporters out there, congratulations. You guys won. We'll see what happens. And it's just a sign of respect. And it's
yeah.
like acknowledging it. And I'm not going,
That's
calling them
great.
names or anything. Yeah, man. But and it's not really a trick. It's just an authentic sign of respect. Like you
Right.
won. I
Yeah.
lost. You won. And anyway, and then you can kind of go into,
Browbeating.
I can go into what?
I said browbeating.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it just gives me, I talk about the Harris campaign and helping her and things like
Oh,
that and
that's
all those
cool.
Zoom calls
Let
that
me.
we did.
You did help the Harris. Let me ask you this though too, because this
Yeah.
is something I've kind of noticed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here. But I think one of the things the Democrats have to do is put younger people in positions of power, because I think Republicans do that a lot better and a lot well. Like Trump definitely has his oldies at his side,
Mhm.
whatever. But if you look, they put a lot of people who are younger in positions of power, and the Democrats don't seem to do that,
You mean in
to
the
me.
media? In the
Yes.
media.
Yes.
As spokespersons, absolutely. Trump is an animal of the media. He understands the media. Look at the cabinet; they're all telegenic.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got attractive women in positions of power. Exactly what you're saying. They're as young as you're going to get for a governor, but they're still,
Right.
they're relative. They're attractive.
Yeah.
They look good on television. They have experience on television. They're
Yep.
well spoken. All that's hugely important when it comes to communicating to people.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. They
no,
do that
I
a lot.
agree with you. And the spokesperson for what's his name? What's her name? The Levitt. Is Catherine Levitt?
Catherine Levy.
What?
Yeah.
She's the blonde-headed woman who's the what do you? I'm not. I'm blanking on the name. Uh,
Press,
for the press conference,
press
press secretary.
secretary.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she's a relatively young woman and articulate and attractive,
Yeah.
and
And
that's really
feist, and comes back at people, whether she's right or
yes,
not about it. That's the other thing too, is they have this ability to put people, whether they know what they're talking about or not, but just have high levels of confidence in front of a camera.
yeah.
So they're like, rapid fire. Like it's like, whenever you
And
watch
with
those.
J.D. Vance, for
Yeah,
example,
exactly, exactly. What do
yeah.
you? I'm curious. What do you think about? Because my friends and I have been having this conversation, and I'm kind of writing a piece about it. Uh, about people from our side of our ilk, comedians,
Mhm.
seemingly being I mean, the majority of them being right wing. Like, and I don't know if you.
Are they? The
I don't know.
majority of
Okay,
comics are right wing.
maybe not the majority, but here's the way I've like. So when I was
You're
younger,
talking club comics, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And or even like, okay, the ones that, here's what I find, if I tell somebody, and I'm a comedian, right? This happened to me the other day. I was literally at my local pizza joint, and I was getting stuff, and I was talking to the guy who owns the thing, and he was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "I'm a comedian." And he's like, "Oh, it must be great out there now. No more censorship now that Trump's it." And I think, yeah, and his idea of comedy is Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Tony Hinchcliffe, all those comedian
Yeah.
slash podcast dudes who
Mhm.
who are Tim Dillon, who are in that kind of limelight. But to me, when I was younger, that was not my view of comedians. It was Robin Williams, Billy Crystal, Paul Reiser, Jerry Seinfeld, like
Yeah.
all those guys who were who were left
Yeah.
leaning, or at least, you know, um, what do you call it? Um, bucked power in a certain way, as opposed to these guys who are now these comedians who are rich as fuck, and they seem to bend towards MAGA. Do you find that to be? I mean, what's your take on that, or the
I'm
reason
not
why?
even. I'm not uh, cued in as much to the comedy scene with those people that you mentioned. Well, I know
Hmm.
Joe, and I heard about Tony from the the
Yeah,
um, the big deal at
the rally.
the rally. Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with a couple of guys, but I hear what you're saying. The pendulum swings. You know,
Hmm.
the pendulum swings coming out of the '60s, the '70s, the '80s. It was going one way. You know what I mean? Or the comedy was going that way. They had the George Collins, the Lenny Bruce, the
Yeah,
Richard Pryors, all those people, and then so then the Democrats were in power for a long time. So the pendulum, they got the other side. They got the Greg Gutfelds and the Fox
yeah,
folks, and
right.
and so it's broadened is what it is. There's not just one monolithic point of view from the comedy community.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
get. I mean, and I guess it wasn't. It was it like that? I mean, I know you. There was. I know there were like. I think maybe back in the day, people saw somebody like Dice Clay as a. I mean, maybe you would have seen him more as a conservative comic from today's point of view back then. Was it like that though? Like, did people look at comedians in terms of liberal, right wing, Republican, back in the
I
80s,
don't
60s,
I
70s,
don't
80s?
think so. There wasn't there wasn't a television outlet for liberal comedy, and there
Sure.
wasn't really a television outlet for conservative comedy. There weren't the media landscape wasn't divided with a Fox, a MSNBC, a CNN network. There weren't all these different avenues where you could get in your lane and stay there. I mean,
Right.
I did the Tonight Show, and it was pretty. Johnny Carson was pretty down the middle.
Yeah,
He would,
apolitical. Yeah.
he was talking to the whole country all
Hmm.
the time for 30 years. And my manager would say, Johnny, nobody knows. No, Johnny never lets on where he really stands on these things,
Right.
because it's like the Michael Jordan quote. Republicans buy Nikes too. But they buy sneakers too.
Yeah.
So there was that mentality, but it was just there was not all these different channels and all these different outlets. But I think to go back to like Carlin, and when he was doing the 7 dirty words you couldn't say on TV, that type of stuff, and Lenny Bruce, and there were, you if you were going to do network television, you had to construct a set that was good for network television,
Sure.
or you didn't stay on. And the Smothers Brothers got canceled,
For
and
opposing the
people,
Vietnam War.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that stuff happened, and it's much more, people's views are much more
Yeah.
transparent now, and
I
there's not the consequences. If there's like a place for everybody.
I feel like also comedians get more press and almost more respect. They get more attention for saying something political on one side or the other than they do for just being fucking funny. Like, I don't ever see somebody going, in the press, like, oh, this Bill Burr joke is pure genius. It's hilarious. It's blah, 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 blah. But they'll grab something he said, like Free Luigi Mangione, and be like, oh, Bill Burr wants all healthcare executives to, you know what I mean? As opposed
Yeah,
to being like, he just put out a special. Why don't you talk about how fucking funny he is? But they
yeah,
don't do that. Like it's so weird to me that like comedians have and listen, I mean, I dive into that too, where my most of my social media is me shouting about how I feel about social issues, about the country, and trying to be funny about it. But
yeah,
on stage, maybe 90% of my material is just what I find funny, and me
yeah,
talking about myself and stuff.
right,
And of course, by doing that, you loop back into social commentary and political commentary because you're alive and you live on this planet, and
yeah,
that's the well I dip in. But like,
yeah.
yeah, I think it also, like, the media maybe manipulates how comedians get to be well known. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
we don't get a sitcom anymore, but we do get on the cover of maybe LA Times or something like that because we aligned with the right point of view.
yeah, and I think when it comes out to like a joke, it's a lot of it's clickbait.
Yeah.
What are people gonna be outraged? Because for every, say, pro Trump thing, there's a 75 million people that feel the opposite way. And for
Sure.
every anti-Trump thing, there's a 75 million people who feel the exact opposite way, who want to get in there and tangle,
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, so I think that's part of it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a fascinating thing to me. I think about that kind of stuff constantly because we're in this world and everything seemed to have changed, especially after COVID. Post COVID, shit changed so fucking quickly. Like
Yeah,
entertainment wise, politically, like there's still like even, people don't talk like I think COVID had so much to do with how the youth's their political beliefs. You know what I mean? I think COVID in a way shifted more of Gen Z towards, like MAGA or even just conservatism in general, because all they knew was there were these people. Nobody understands public health. No one's ever explained public health to anybody before, and then suddenly it was thrust upon it, and younger people were kind of like, we have to do what for who, and I'm not allowed to go out to bars anymore and fuck and do all that shit while I'm, for God knows how long. And then they
yeah,
were like, wait, who's the side that's telling us to just do whatever we want? Oh yeah, that's that's their side.
yeah.
So I think it shifted some stuff, you know what I mean?
I think it definitely played a part. Yeah, and the other thing that plays a part is the disinformation component,
Yeah.
because I mean, there were people. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor,
Right.
but I just assumed that the vaccine, when they came out with it, was going to work, or they
Yeah.
wouldn't let it, or they wouldn't put it out there. I
Yeah,
just had
exactly.
that confidence in
Yeah.
in Dr. Fauci and all those people.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing is that they got that in record time, and nobody was like happy about it. I was happy.
I
I
know.
thought initially people were happy. We got the vaccine. It's a great. I was at a club, kind of in a conservative area of the state. I said, "Hey, we got the vaccine, huh? All right." And people go, "Boo,
Yeah. Yeah.
boo."
Yeah, and what's weird is those are the ones who thought the government, like, what they were, like, trying to kill them, and I'm
I
like, they
know
would just do it. Like, you don't think they have the ability to wipe you off the fucking
exactly.
map?
But
Like,
that's what I mean about the conspiracy theories and casting doubt on it. And the irony is, they developed it on Trump's watch, and
yeah,
both parties allocated billions of dollars and warp speed. That was the name of it, warp speed, to get
yep,
the vaccine. And had he embraced it. Had he embraced the vaccine, and had he come out and said, we should wear masks, we're one country. We want to protect people, and we want to protect our neighbors, and it's the best thing. We have to sacrifice. He would have won. He
yeah,
would have won,
yep,
because most people, I think, trust the medical establishment not to put
yeah,
stuff out there that's going to hurt
yeah.
people. So anyway, so the disinformation component is huge.
Are you do you ever think about, like, how many people on our side fell for it too? Like, Bill Maher is one of those dudes that I don't understand what happened to him. Like, I think, like, I've said this before, but I truly do think that COVID broke Bill Maher in the same way 9/11 broke Dennis Miller. Where they're just where they're not functioning the way they should be anymore. He's so hung up on, like, what he puts in his body and anti-vax shit. And no matter who talks to him, whether it's Neil deGrasse Tyson, whether it's Richard Dawkins, whether it's his own buddy Seth, um Family Guy, Seth,
I know who you mean. Yeah, Seth Rogen, no, not Seth.
not Seth Rogen, Seth, fucking A, I can't think of his
Yeah, I know who
goddamn
you
name.
mean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but anyway, Seth, we'll call him Seth, we know.
yeah,
But yeah, but like he doesn't, nothing gets through. But he's pretty much been a logical guy. Like, they're like, they said it worked and then it didn't. And then it's like, no, what they said was when the vaccine came out, it was for this specific strain.
yeah,
And then it evolved. And then
yeah,
it wasn't, so it was going to protect you somewhat, but not fully. And the reason it would evolve is because people didn't do what they needed to do. So this thing kept spreading. Like, it's pretty, like, I'm retarded. It's pretty simple to me. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, are we watching the same shit? Because I
yeah.
get it.
You
And
know,
I didn't go to
yeah,
college.
yeah. I think RFK Jr. was making this point, and I think it's a valid point. He said no vaccine is 100% effective for everybody all the time.
Hmm.
Some people have negative reactions to
Sure.
vaccines. Some people have negative reactions to peanuts.
Yeah,
Some
yeah, yeah.
people. I mean,
Penicillin,
so that happens, and so there's some high-profile cases of people who took it, I guess, and got really sick, and but there's a lot more cases of people who didn't take it and died. Like we lost
absolutely.
1 million people. And
Absolutely.
the thing about the disinformation, it can sow seeds of doubt in people. A friend of mine, recovering heroin addict,
Hmm.
wouldn't take the vaccine. I said, "Why won't you take the vaccine?" His exact words were, "You don't know what's in it." I said, "You've been buying illegal drugs on the streets from strangers for 25 years. What do
Right.
you think? That was approved by the the
Yeah.
Surgeon General?"
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh my God.
But I think that the disinformation is a huge
Yeah.
problem. One thing
Yeah.
I try to do in these shows, I'm not going to say stuff that I know is incorrect just for the sake of a laugh or
Right.
just to make a point. I'm
Right.
going to try to be honest. I try to do the same thing on stage because people got enough problems without me feeding them disinformation,
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
at least deliberately.
Right.
We can be misled, but you know, but that's not, as long as it's not deliberate on our part. I feel like we're doing as well as we can.
Absolutely. Yeah. How long did it take you to put this show together?
This show, I've been working on it actually. During the pandemic, I made a film called The Radical Middle. Why would a comedian run for office? And
Hmm.
I had filmed a live show, and for 4 years we just worked on it as a documentary, based on running for lieutenant governor of Massachusetts in
Right.
2018. So that was done, and then this one is called Humor and Hope for Humanity. And it's basically coming out of the pandemic and coming out of I felt like people want to laugh. And what can I offer that is hopeful? Tell a story. So it's really autobiographical with highlights and political highlights and clips and things from over the career, from the Tonight Show with Johnny and 60
Nice.
Minutes, and yeah,
Very
and things
cool.
like yeah. And some surprises. And for me, it was nice I've been doing it 40 years,
Right.
so for me, it was nice to just go, you know what? This was in 88, and we're still talking about a lot of this stuff now,
Yeah.
and so it was like a retrospective for
That's
me.
great. What did you?
Yeah.
Do you? I mean, I started to do that years ago, but like, did you have all that stuff? The like, did you save? Are you a posterity guy? Like, did you save all the news
Oh,
clippings and video clips
well,
and
I
stuff?
had to get no, I didn't have news clippings in it, but I had to get the rights from the Tonight Show to show clips, and I just invested. Same with 60 Minutes. I had to get the rights to show a clip
Okay.
in that, and which I did. I did that for the film, and I also used parts of it for the live show that I'll be doing at the City Winery
Oh, that's
on
great.
Friday. Yeah, and so I like it, and what I like is you can tell a story and you can be political, but you can be way more personal than political. So you can show how you arrive at your political opinions through your own experiences.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that to me is really it's I like doing it first of all, but I also like listening to other people. You were
Yeah.
talking about Bill Maher, right?
Hmm.
I watch Bill Maher's show every week. It's
Right.
one of the only things that I always watch because I love the fact that he has different points of view on and they mix it up. And I've
Yeah.
seen the shift that you're talking about in Bill, and
Hmm.
to each his own. People get older, they see things differently, so I hear you and I watch it and I say, good for you. Same with Dennis Miller,
Yeah.
people. So, but
And
here's the thing.
I like them and respect them both
Yeah,
comedically.
me
I mean, I
too.
think they're
Oh
very,
yeah,
very
me too.
smart, and I think and even Bill still hits the nail on the head, I mean, especially with the
Yeah,
ending monologue once in a while. I just I think what happens is too, and I don't know if you get like this where, you know, you see somebody that you've admired
yeah,
or respected in comedy, and then you see a shift or something like that where you're like,
yeah,
man, this is a hard turn for me to follow.
Yeah.
And not, you're right, you don't necessarily have to, because you're like, to each their own. What are you going to do? Sometimes there's going to be shit you agree with, sometimes it's not.
Well, we all remember when Dylan went Christian, right?
Yeah.
He had a period. I think it was the 70s or 80s. All of a sudden, he was like born again.
I
And that
know
was
that
like,
was a hard fucking pill to swallow.
so I think Bill's on safe ground. I know how he feels about religion, but if we see him out there born again and baptizing people in
that's
or
you're
being
right.
baptized,
Yeah, that's the end. That's the end.
that'll be it. But the thing, what I was saying about those guys, Bill, and I so I see his show and I see him as a advocate for a point of view. Okay, cool. Then I watch him on Club Random on the podcast,
Yeah.
and you see a different side of him. I
Yeah.
see him there with Bill Burr, right? And the thing I love seeing with Bill is when he has other comics on that make him laugh, man. It just you see a different side of him,
Yes.
and it's self-deprecating, and he doesn't have to win the argument, and
I like him with other
very,
comics.
yeah, and he had Bill Burr on, and Bill's giving him a bunch of
Bill's
shit.
roasted the shit out of him, especially on the Israel-Palestine shit. Like, it was so great, like,
Yeah,
just seeing somebody take the piss out of him.
but Bill can handle it.
He
Bill
can.
Maher can handle it, and he's laughing and he's having a good time, and it's just a different side of somebody.
Yeah.
Listen to Al Franken's podcast
I
the
love
other
Al
day.
Franken. He's the
Yeah,
greatest.
yeah, me too. And he's obviously very political, and he usually
Mhm.
has guests on that it's very academic and it's very informative, and they know their stuff.
Yeah.
But he was also on the other day, and he was having somebody interview him about his relationship with Saturday Night Live and how he got into that and how it happened. And it was just a different angle on
Love
Al
it.
Franken. He was talking about, well, I was in college and I was doing this in high school, and my friend, I think his name was Tom Davis, we were doing things in chapel at the high
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
And we started doing a comedy team, and I went to college, and he was my roommate. So it was all this personal narrative that I found very endearing, and just a different side of Al Franken. So there's a lot to be said for just being yourself on
Yeah.
stage and storytelling, and you can tell people how you arrive at your conclusions by your own experiences.
Absolutely, yeah. And it is that's my favorite thing to see, is those guys kind of interacting with other comics, because there's a history there. There's a
Yeah,
history. There's a camaraderie always, no matter whether they're younger, older, whatever. Yeah, I feel the same. Like, I love when Jon Stewart's got when he used to have Dennis Leary on,
yeah,
and the two of them would just fucking,
yeah.
they were buddies.
Yeah, Dennis and I started together, and we did a 40th reunion for the Ding Ho Comedy Club we started at.
Oh,
We did
that's
it in
awesome.
2020, and when everybody was on Zoom. So
Right.
so I interviewed Dennis, and it was exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
He was saying, I met you, you were the bartender. And I go, the bartender's getting on stage? Wait a second, if the bartender's getting on stage, I can fucking do this.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And that type of relationship is it's great. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean when old friends talk on the
Yeah.
air. It's
Yeah,
great.
it makes you. I mean, when that happens, you wind up feeling like you're there and a part of it, and that you've known them even better than when they're
Yes,
doing anything else.
that's right. When you had Leno on, it
Yeah.
reminded me that was a great interview with
Thank
you and
you.
Jay Leno. He's awesome, and you are as well.
Thank
But when
you.
you had him on, it reminded me of when during the pandemic when Bill Maher had Leno on, and they're sitting in his backyard, and
Yeah.
and Leno is just one-liners,
Yeah.
just and Maher is falling off his chair laughing because Leno, he goes, Jay, you're the best one-liner there is out there. You're the best among the best working comics ever.
Yeah.
And Jay had all this stuff on the pandemic and all this stuff, and Ma was just cracking up. It was just a different side
It
of them.
is.
You saw a different side of both of them.
Yeah, it's so
They're two
great.
friends.
And
Yeah.
Leno is truly like a blue collar dude comic. Like, he just
Yeah.
doesn't like the getting him on the show was great, because he doesn't have any representation, right? So there's nobody like really in the middle there, except for the fact that I went about it in such a dumb way. Not even a dumb way, in a way that, like, you're supposed to, where you think people are going to just do their jobs and they don't. So, like, he was going to be at a theater and for this huge benefit thing, in Jersey, and then he was going to be in Atlantic City. So I just had my guy call, my manager call the theater and be like, "Hey, look, we'd love to help plug your show. We've done it for other
Yeah.
guys, like, and we'll have Leno on." And they ran us through this whole thing to the point where it never got to Leno.
Yeah.
And then I have a screw loose in my head. I just called his production company,
Yeah.
wound up getting this Helga who helps him out or whatever, this great lady. And then she was like, "Oh, hang on one second." And then Jay just got on the phone with me.
Yeah.
And he was just like, "Hey, what do you want to do? You want to do a podcast?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, this is great. This is Leno. This is fucking awesome." And and then he invited me out to AC. So we hung out in AC, and all we did backstage was tell street jokes.
Oh, cool.
And then
Yeah.
pointed out everybody. It was so funny because I'm not that young, but I'm younger than him. And we're looking at, we're in the back room. You've done the oh my God, where were we? Was it the fucking Borgata or was it the
Not the Ice House.
Caesars? No. And I love the Ice House, by the way. They're such good people. No, we were in Atlantic City, New Jersey.
Okay. No, I haven't done it. No.
But anyway, they've got like,
Yeah.
all the the usual shtick, right? Everybody that's performed there on the walls. And I'm sitting there next to him and I'm just going, I'm like, "Oh, that's that's so." I'm like, "Oh, that's Rick Dukeman. That's so." And he's like, "How fucking old? How do you know all?" And I'm like, "Because I'm a nerd. I'm a comedy nerd. I absorb all of this shit. Every fucking, So yeah, and then it was just bizarre. It was so cool. Yeah. But anyway, that's kind of stuff that makes me,
But that doesn't surprise me at all about Jay getting on the phone and saying, "Sure, I'll do your podcast." He's always had a reputation of just being very generous with his time. He always was helping comics, with advice. He was, he's helpful to myself and many, many, many other folks. And it's one of the great things about him. He never forgot his roots. And he was about, I would say, I don't know, 5-10 years maybe ahead of the scene here. When he started, there were no comedy clubs in Boston, and he was in the 70s. So within 10 years, there was probably 5 clubs in the city. But he missed all that. He was doing the strip joints, the Naked Eye, and he was doing jazz clubs and things like that. But he was always very helpful to people.
Yeah, he's a super nice guy. You know who else? So there's a bunch of guys that I know. Sometimes I go through. Well, last time we talked, you were mentioning names, and I was like, "Oh, I've had these guys on too. Like, it'd be great to get them all together to talk." 'Cause, like, what am I doing sitting in the middle? But yeah, it's just you have like a collection of guys you're friends with that that I'm just like, it's so crazy that you all came up together and are like successful and are doing this thing. Do you ever just sit around and look at each other like, how the fuck did this happen? Or like
I think about it all the time because it was so unplanned and it was just so, it was like we're at open mics, where Lenny Clark had an open mic night 2 blocks from where I grew up in Cambridge. Lenny and I went to the same high school. And so I knew him from high school, and and so he was a year ahead of me, I think.
So when you guys are in high school, are you talking comedy in high school?
No.
Okay.
No, it was no, not at all. Lenny was into politics more. He was class president. Yeah, he was class president, and it was the early 70s, and there was a lot of like, the national issues were being reflected in the local high school. The Vietnam War, the superintendent, the civil rights issues. So that was all being played out locally as well as nationally.
Right.
So so that was going on then. So that's what Lenny was into. But he was always but anyway, so he started doing comedy, I think, in the late 70s, 79, 78 maybe. And he was doing the Wizard of Comedy. He'd wear a turban and he'd get up there and do like that magic and stuff. And, and he was really funny and crazy. And, but nobody knew what they were doing. I used to dress up like one of the Blues Brothers. I had a trench coat, a hat. I had a beard. I wore shades. I'd come out with my harmonica. I do the test tube baby blues.
Oh my God.
Thank God I'm a burb. I did song parody. Nobody knew what they were really doing. Boston was not an industry town. Nobody went there to uh, for their comedy career, at least at that time. But after a while, all these people start showing up because partially because of Emerson. But within
Right.
5 years, you had Stephen Wright, Paula Poundstone, Dennis Leary, Bobcat Goldthwait, Lenny Sweeney. A bunch of the guys that from the neighborhoods, Mike Donovan and Bill Campbell and all these folks who were really Jack Gallagher. Well, all
Oh
these
yeah,
guys were
yeah.
like local people who just started to do comedy. Bobcat Goldthwait came into town. Barry Crimmins
Oh,
was
they're
the
the
one who
best.
started the room. Now Barry Crimmins did come to Boston, and he
Yeah.
was an aspiring comic. He was from upstate New York, and he was hitchhiking. He was going to New York, but the guy who picked him up said, "I'm going to Boston." He goes, "All right, I'll go to Boston." And he came and he
Wow.
founded. He opened the Ding Ho Chinese
Yeah.
Restaurant Comedy Club, and that's really how it started. But
I
but
had a few
again, it was
interactions
so
with.
organic and it
Yeah.
was so unscripted that you there was a way to develop and not even realizing that you're developing because you don't know what you're developing for. You're just trying to get laughs on stage, you
Yeah.
know.
I had a few interactions with Barry, maybe
And
on like
Barry
on.
Katz was from
Oh, Barry
Boston.
Cass is
Well,
great.
yeah, Barry Katz was he was so funny. He was doing open mics at the time, and he did one called he did an impression of Popeye, and I did the blues news. I'd come out with my trench coat and go, and this happened today, and the cost of wine has gone down, and all this. It was pretty funny. But
It
anyway,
that kind of stuff. Whenever nobody knows what they're doing, but they're just
yeah,
having fun with it, is always like peak, whatever that time, like even television, like, when Letterman was first on and
yeah.
he couldn't do anything that the Tonight Show was doing or anything he did previously, on NBC to have to come up with new stuff on the spot. It was just, oh man, it was so cool to see that kind of shit.
Yeah, and this weekend, the anniversary of 50 years of SNL, that
Phenomenal.
whole thing, how that developed. That's what Al Franken was talking about in his
Yeah.
interview, how that developed. I think he was one of the first writers hired, if not the first, but
Yeah.
how Lorne did it and how they had to choose. They only had 7 people in the cast
Yeah.
initially, and how they had to come up with stuff every week. And,
Oh yeah.
and again, there's no rules, so you can't really make mistakes as long as you
Yeah.
laughs.
And someone gave them the keys, you know what I mean? And that's the
Yeah,
best. You're like, there's nothing better than that feeling of like, nobody's watching us right now.
yeah,
like we don't have to. I'm like, this is fucking amazing.
yeah.
That's super great, dude. Did you watch the special?
I watched parts of it. Yeah, I watched parts of it.
I
I saw the scene with the Debbie Downer
Oh
was
yeah, that was
hilarious.
good with De Niro. Yeah, that was fucking great. That was
That
great with
was
De Niro.
really funny.
Yeah.
That was really funny.
Oh my god.
The same thing has happened with podcasts.
Yeah.
The podcast completely organic. You must know Mark Maron.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, yeah. So Mark tells the story of he was doing Air America, and he was, it was an official radio show. But at night, the studio was open, so he could go in there and he
Yeah.
could do stuff and just put it out on the web, and that's how he basically developed his show or his ability to speak. He
Yeah.
always says to talk when there's no other guests, just to talk by yourself
It's
for
hard.
an
I
extended period
very
of time.
rarely do it. I don't know how people do it. Like I've had
Burr's
to.
great at it too.
Oh, Burr is Burr
He
just
gets,
talks to himself. It's
I
insanity.
know.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm like, this isn't a show. This is a running monologue this guy has, and he happened to put it
Yeah.
down on, um, yeah, it is crazy to it.
But again, just developing organically you have the opportunity, you got the microphone, it's on,
Yeah,
and you have the opportunity to create something and it's unscripted.
it is. It's really, really cool and it's fantastic. Tell me when your shows are, what you got coming up, for
Yeah,
the audience.
sure. First of all, if somebody's interested in watching the film, I made the film The Radical Middle. Jimmy Tingle, The Radical Middle. Why would a comedian run for office? It is on my website at jimmytingle.com. It's only 50 minutes. It is about why I ran for lieutenant governor of Massachusetts in 2018. I think you will enjoy it.
Sweet.
And then the live show is this Friday night, February 21st at the Winery in New York City. How far do you live from the city?
I'm only 2 hours away.
All right. Are you around this weekend?
I should be, yeah. Oh no, I've got. What am I talking about? I got gigs.
Okay. I'm trying to drum up audiences, but
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have
yeah.
a discount for you. We have a discount to all the people who watch this show.
Thank you.
Tingle 25.
Oh,
Tingle 25. That's the discount code. You can use that code. Come to my website, jimmytingle.com. You can get tickets right there, or City Winery, whatever
beautiful.
the citywinery.com, I guess it is, NYC. Get tickets, use that code, 10% off. I think you'll enjoy the show. Love to see you there. I can't wait to work at the winery. I was there to see another show just to scope it out. And beautiful room.
It is. It's
Beautiful
a
room.
beautiful fucking room. Last time I was there was with Glenn Phillips from Toad the Wet Sprocket, and they revamped that whole thing. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous. I mean, I don't know if you like it, but it's post. I think post COVID, they just did all these renovations to it, and it's beautiful, phenomenal room.
Yeah. Right there on 11th Avenue.
Yeah, you're gonna love it.
So, yeah. John, thanks a million for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's a blast talking to you. And I just wish
Absolutely.
you continued success with the show, man. It's great.
Thank you so much, dude. Thanks for coming on. It's always a good time talking to you too. I learned so much having you on, dude.
I love it.
Thanks, man. Peace.
Take care. Peace out.
Dystopia tonight.